Hello, Virgo. I hope you doing very, very well. Okay. So, the moment you stop making yourself available, everything that was waiting for you to stop making yourself available rushes in. That is the mechanic. That is the precise, almost ruthless logic of what is about to unfold in your life. And I want you to understand it clearly before anything else in this reading, because understanding it changes the nature of what you are being asked to do. You are not retreating, you are creating the conditions for everything you actually want. There is a person you have been too present for. Not too present in the way of someone who cares too much, because caring is not the problem here. Too present in the specific sense of being available in a form and at a frequency that has not been serving you, that has been consuming the energy you need for other things, that has been holding you in a position that is closer to that person and further from your own life than the actual balance of the situation warrants. You have been giving more than the return, not because you are naive about the imbalance. You see it, you have seen it for a while. But there is something about this person, some combination of history and chemistry and the particular way they exist in your attachment, that has made it difficult to do what you already know needs to be done. Pull back. Not in anger, not in the theatrical making a point way that is really still about them, in the quiet, self directed, completely internal way of someone who has finally decided to reallocate their resources toward things that actually produce return. That decision, made cleanly and acted on without announcement, is the lesson. And it is a lesson this person is about to receive at a volume they were not prepared for. Let me describe what I am seeing, because the image is specific. A space that previously had you in it. Your presence, your attention, your energy, your availability, occupying a certain portion of this person's daily experience in a way they have come to rely on without fully registering the reliance, the way people rely on something that has always been there, without gratitude, without active acknowledgement, without the specific conscious appreciation that tends to only arrive when the thing is no longer there to appreciate, and then the space changes. Not dramatically, not all at once. The particular quality of your absence arriving in degrees, subtle at first, then undeniable, then impossible to explain away as coincidence or circumstance or your being busy this week. You are simply less there consistently, without announcement, without explanation that gives them something to respond to or negotiate with. Just less there. And I want to tell you what happens in them when they finally register what has changed. Because this is the part of the reading that the title is pointing at, and it is specific. The first thing that happens is confusion. Not the confusion of someone who does not understand what occurred, the confusion of someone who does understand on some level, but who has not built a framework in which this was a possible outcome. Who had organized their understanding of you around a particular quality of availability that they expected to remain constant regardless of what they did or did not do in return. The constancy was part of how they understood you. And the constancy has ended. That ending produces a recalibration that is uncomfortable in direct proportion to how much they had been depending on what you were providing. And the recalibration is uncomfortable enough that it produces something else. Something they did not expect to find themselves feeling. Urgency, the specific slightly panicked quality of someone who has suddenly understood the value of something in the moment of its absence that they entirely failed to understand in the moment of its presence. I want to speak to what this urgency produces in them, because it is not simply an internal experience that stays contained within their own private reckoning. It produces action. They reach in some form, maybe directly, with the specific quality of someone who is now communicating from a different place than they were communicating from before, maybe indirectly through the network of people between you, sending signals that find their way back to you through the channels available, maybe through a change in behavior that is visible even without direct contact, but they reach because the particular discomfort of losing access to someone you took for granted is one of the most effective teachers available to human beings. And this person is in the middle of receiving a very thorough education. You are not watching it happen. That is the important part. You are not positioned at a distance, observing their response and calibrating your next move based on whether the lesson is landing. You have genuinely moved. Your attention is elsewhere. Elsewhere, in a way that is real rather than performed. And that genuineness, that authentic reorientation of your energy toward your own life rather than theirs is precisely what makes the lesson effective. You cannot fake this particular thing and produce the same result. The result comes from the real turning. You are not watching it happen. That is the important part. You are not positioned at a distance observing their response and calibrating your next move based on whether the lesson is landing. You have genuinely moved. Your attention is elsewhere. Elsewhere, in a way that is real rather than performed. And that genuineness, that authentic reorientation of your energy toward your own life rather than theirs is precisely what makes the lesson effective. You cannot fake this particular thing and produce the same result. The result comes from the real turning. I want to describe what the real turning actually looks like from the inside of your experience, because it is not dramatic. It does not feel like power. It does not feel, in the immediate days of it, like the triumphant reorientation that the title of this reading might suggest. It feels like grief, a little, and then underneath the grief, once the first layer of it moves through, something quieter, a quality of spaciousness, the specific, slightly surprising sensation of having more energy available than usual, more capacity, more of yourself present in whatever you are doing, because the significant drain that had become background noise has finally stopped. The absence of a drain does not feel like an addition at first. It feels like silence where something loud used to be. But then the silence opens into space, and the space begins to fill with the things that were always trying to reach you but could not get past the noise. Now I want to tell you about what opens up when you turn. Because the title of this reading promises the world and money, and I intend to be as specific as the energy allows me to be about what that actually means. When you were directing significant energy toward a person or a situation that was not returning equivalent value, that energy was not simply disappearing into the interaction. It was being redirected away from everything else, away from your own projects, your own visibility, your own creative and professional and financial presence in the world. You were, in a real and measurable sense, less available to your own life. And the world, which is responsive to the specific quality of your engagement with it, was receiving a diminished version of your attention and producing a diminished version of results in return. That is about to change. The energy that was flowing toward the person who was not honoring it is beginning to flow back into your own field. back into the work you have been doing without your full presence behind it, back into the relationships that actually reciprocate, back into the creative and professional channels that have been waiting for you to show up to them at full capacity rather than the reduced capacity of someone who is giving a significant portion of themselves elsewhere. And when full capacity returns, the results feel like they come from nowhere. They do not come from nowhere. They come from you. Finally, fully, undistractedly in your own corner. Let me speak specifically to the money because the title names it and I want to honor that specificity. What I am reading is not a vague financial improvement over time. What I am reading has the quality of something that moves with the specific speed of a door that has been waiting for someone to be positioned correctly in front of it. When you step out of the field of the person who was consuming your resources, you step into a field where something has been waiting, an opportunity, a recognition, a situation that required a version of you that was not available while you were significantly invested elsewhere. Something that needed your full, undivided, completely present attention to actually activate. And that has been in a kind of holding pattern, not fully accessible because the version of you showing up to it was carrying too much weight from somewhere else. The holding pattern is ending. For some of you, this is direct. Money that arrives through a professional channel that has been moving slowly and that now suddenly moves. A project that gains momentum. A conversation that becomes an offer. An amount that changes the texture of what is possible in your daily life. For others, this is more structural. The financial shift is not a single arriving thing, but a change in how you are able to operate in the world, in what you can pursue without the drain of giving too much to something that gives too little, in the specific freedom of someone who has reallocated their capacity toward their own building rather than someone else's maintenance. Both are real, both are coming. The direction is the same in either case, toward you, toward what you are building, toward the version of your life that becomes possible when you stop subsidizing someone else's comfort with your own resources. I want to speak to the lesson itself now because the title centers it and it deserves its own examination rather than being treated as a side effect of the other things happening. The lesson you are about to give this person is not revenge. I want to be clear about that. It is not a strategic withdrawal designed to produce a particular reaction that you are then going to monitor and respond to. It is not theater. It is the natural, unavoidable consequence of you finally choosing yourself. And that distinction matters enormously because revenge keeps you connected. Revenge requires the other person to respond in a particular way in order for the desired outcome to be achieved. Revenge positions the other person as the center of the action, even when that action looks like it is about you moving away from them. What I am describing is not that. What I am describing is a genuine reorientation, one where the other person's response is genuinely irrelevant to your well-being, not because you have performed indifference, but because you have actually found something more worth your attention than monitoring their reaction to your absence. That reorientation is the lesson, not look what you lose when you take me for granted. I am no longer organized around whether you are looking. Tell me in the comments if this is a move you have been circling, a withdrawal you have known needed to happen, but that has been difficult to execute cleanly because the attachment, however unbalanced, is real. Tell me if you felt this reading name something that has been sitting in you without quite being said out loud yet. I want to know. I want to speak to the difficulty of this because I think it would be dishonest not to. Moving away from someone you care about, even when the caring has been costing you more than it is producing, is not simple. The attachment is real. The history is real. The specific way this person exists in your interior life, even when that existence has not been serving you, does not simply dissolve because you have made the intellectual decision that it needs to. The feelings persist, and the feelings are going to be present during the withdrawal in ways that complicate the clarity of it. There will be moments of doubt, of wondering whether the pulling back is the right call or simply the fearful one, of feeling the absence of the connection even when you are the one who created the absence, of wanting to fill the gap you made because the gap is uncomfortable. Do not fill it. Not because the discomfort of the gap is unimportant, but because the gap is productive. The space you are creating by not filling it with the same person and the same dynamic is the exact space into which the other things are moving. The world fills vacuums, but it cannot fill a vacuum that keeps getting refilled with the same thing that was always there. Let the gap be a gap and watch what chooses to fill it when you stop choosing for it. I want to speak to something about you that I think is the truest thing in this reading. You already know this person is not where your energy belongs. You have known for a while. The knowledge has not been a revelation or an insight that arrived recently. It has been a background fact that you have been navigating around rather than acting on. A truth that was available and that you kept finding reasons to delay in acting on because the acting on it requires a kind of courage that is different from the courage of confrontation. It is the courage of withdrawal, of prioritizing yourself without the justification of being wronged dramatically enough that the withdrawal feels obviously warranted to everyone watching, of moving in your own direction without a villain to point to, of choosing yourself quietly without a narrative that explains and excuses the choosing. That kind of courage is harder in some ways than the dramatic kind because it has no external witness to validate it, no audience to confirm that you are doing the right thing. Just the internal knowing of someone who has finally decided that knowing something is enough justification for acting on it, you know, that is enough. Act on it, you know, that is enough. Act on it. I want to add something to this because I think it matters for how you carry yourself through the withdrawal. You do not owe this person an explanation. That is the piece that I feel tripping up many of you who have been circling this decision. The sense that the withdrawal is not legitimate unless it is explained. Unless you present your reasons and receive their acknowledgement that the reasons are valid. Unless the moving away has been, in some sense, approved by the person you are moving away from. It has not, and it does not need to be. Your decision to redirect your own energy toward your own life does not require another person's endorsement to be valid. The internal knowing that something has not been serving you is sufficient justification for stopping. You are not withdrawing your participation in order to make a point. You are withdrawing it because it belongs elsewhere. That belonging elsewhere is the whole explanation. And it is an explanation you are giving to yourself, not to them. As we close this reading, I want to show you the view from the other side of this decision. Not the dramatic view, not a scene of triumph or vindication or the satisfying visual of someone realizing too late what they had. That view is not what this reading is about. What this reading is about is quieter than that and more lasting. I see you in a version of your life where the significant portion of your energy that has been directed elsewhere is now entirely your own, working, building, moving through the world with the specific, unimpeded momentum of someone who is not holding a portion of themselves in reserve for a person or a situation that requires maintenance without producing growth. The work is getting done. The results are arriving. The financial channel is open and flowing in a way it has not been because you have been present to it in a way you have not been. And the person who received the lesson, who learned the value of what they had by experiencing its absence, exists somewhere at the edge of this picture, not at the center, not occupying the significant portion of your interior real estate that they once occupied, just at the edge where things that are no longer central tend to eventually find their natural proportion. And you, Virgo, at the center of your own story, finally, completely, exactly where you have always belonged.